I can say that I disagree with that, but I'm not, I may believe it. I may even say it privately, but I'm not going to go out and publicly advocate for like, hey, everybody, he's
So
wrong.
as long as your disagreement and your fundamental moral objection to something they're doing is private and in secret and closeted, then it's okay?
Yes.
You know how insanely Stockholm Syndrome that sounds?
Hey there YouTube, I'm Forrest, Latter-day Skeptic. In today's video, we're going to be going over a different take on the Mormon concept of stewardship. But hang around to the end to see a bonus video from our guy, the one and only Kwaku. In Christianity and Mormonism, the concept of stewardship means that God has given his children blessings, and it's our responsibility to protect and preserve those blessings.
These duties are best described by the concept of stewardship. In gospel terms, the word stewardship designates a sacred, spiritual, or temporal responsibility to take care of something that belongs to God, for which we are accountable.
This concept of stewardship has been talked about more and more recently because authoritative leadership in the Mormon Church has been questioned, and often questioned very publicly.
You know, we value obedience in our culture. And so if that leader in your mind is inseparably connected to God, then it almost feels like, is there really a choice? Like, is it just a choice between good and evil? Because in that sense, it almost feels like you're compelled to obey.
It's important to separate heavenly parents from earthly leaders.
Yeah.
They can have revelation, they can be inspired, but they are not deity.
Rather than publicly questioning the leaders of the church, Mormons are often encouraged to keep their disagreements quiet because it's outside of their stewardship to question the leaders of the church.
Both of them are a little missing the mark, but the church hasn't just kicked them out. Right. Now, if they're going forward and talking about this in Sunday school and like trying to convince people of these things, well, the church may have to take some action. Yeah. But holding those opinions and expressing them every once in a while in private, doesn't warrant them being an apostate or anything like that.
So if there is something that they do that I disagree with, okay, I can say that I disagree with that, but I'm not, I may believe it. I may even say it privately, but I'm not going to go out and publicly advocate for like, hey, everybody, he's
wrong. So as long as your disagreement and your fundamental moral objection to something they're doing is private and in secret and closeted, then it's okay?
Yes.
You know how insanely Stockholm Syndrome that sounds?
No, I think that that's what it means to sustain someone in their authority. You are saying that, say, look, I'm not the one who makes that call. I am deferring to them. I'm allowing them to make that call, and I'm not going to offer my resistance to it because they're the ones who hold the authority to make that call. I disagree.
This idea of stewardship is interesting. Let's look and examine its implications. If stewardship means you should only publicly concern yourself with the dealings within your stewardship, then you shouldn't question the leaders of your church for their decisions. You shouldn't voice your concerns or highlight the flaws of the leaders above you. If this is the case, does it not apply to the positive applications as well? Should members be able to praise their leaders publicly or explain to others how their leaders are correct? Should members be able to voice their approval or highlight the success of their leaders? I'm not sure how stewardship only applies when talking negatively about the organization, but not when talking positively or giving praise or promotion. If one is to only publicly concern themselves with their own stewardship, then I expect Mormons to stop being hypocrites and to end their praise and proselytizing outside of their stewardship.
Well, it's great to have you guys here. This MTC has been open for nearly 4 decades now, and hundreds of thousands of missionaries have come through here to learn and train before heading out to serve their missions all over the world.
So I'm sorry if I don't take this argument seriously, but Mormons are known for pushing their beliefs on people throughout the world. This notion of only being able to deal within your stewardship is just a way for the church to prevent its members from voicing their complaint about their leadership.
When we choose to live according to the words of the prophets, we are on the covenant path that leads to eternal perfection.
You may understandably question what you hear on the news, but you need never doubt the testimony of God's prophets.
Our sustaining of prophets is a personal commitment that we will do our utmost to uphold their prophetic priorities.
I actually think this conception of stewardship is precisely backwards. Just because a leader is responsible for the decision doesn't mean that the input and information provided from their people is working against their stewardship. In fact, in order for the steward to guide the flock properly, input from the people is required.
Great leaders encourage feedback from all members of the organization. They are approachable.
Good stewards require feedback from their people. A military officer, for example, that doesn't take the needs and input of their people into consideration will often have an incomplete picture that will lead them to bad decisions in the future. Here's General McChrystal, a United States Army officer, talking about his leadership challenges in Afghanistan. As you watch the video, think about the challenges that he brings up and how they apply to church leaders today.
I went down to be with a Ranger platoon on an operation in Afghanistan. And on that operation, a sergeant in the platoon had lost about half his arm throwing a Taliban hand grenade back at the enemy after it landed in his fire team. We talked about the operation, and then at the end I did what I often do with a force like that. I asked, where were you on 9/11? And one young Ranger in the back, his hair is tousled and his face is red and windblown from being in combat in the cold Afghan wind. He says, sir, I was in the 6th grade. And it reminded me that we're operating a force that must have shared purpose and shared consciousness, and yet he has different experiences, in many cases a different vocabulary, a completely different skill set in terms of digital media than I do and to many of the other senior leaders. And yet we need to have that shared sense. It also produced something which I call an inversion of expertise, because we had so many changes at the lower levels in technology and tactics and whatnot that suddenly the things that we grew up doing wasn't what the force was doing anymore. So how does a leader stay credible and legitimate when they haven't done what the people you're leading are doing? And it's a brand new leadership challenge, and it forced me to become a lot more transparent, a lot more willing to listen, a lot more willing to be reverse mentored from lower.
Does the leadership of the church understand what it's like to be 18 years old living in the age of the internet? Do they understand what it's like to serve a mission in 2022? Do they understand what it's like to try to find a wife while dating apps exist? Of course not. And this is why a good steward should listen to the people within their stewardship. Good leaders have the ability to listen to input and questions from their people, and if it's done correctly, this will actually increase their authority.
I concluded the proper balance here depended on the officer's ability to listen and accept input while still making it clear that he was the ultimate decision maker. That was the key. A second lieutenant couldn't be afraid to engage in frank and productive dialogue with his key leaders.
Because of the failure of the Mormon Church, Mormons are often afraid that questioning their leadership will reduce the leadership's authority. And perhaps they're right.
Would the church issuing an apology do anything to save their faith?
If the church issued an apology, that is the crack in the dam that breaks forth a whole bunch of different paradigm changing things in the church, because what it then does is it forces everybody to reconceptualize the nature of a prophet, and the claim to act as God's mouthpiece goes away.
The false doctrine of prophetic infallibility is at the heart of just about every problem the church is facing today. You are absolutely right when you say you have to start redefining what a prophet is. And because so many of us have defined prophets to be these flawless, perfect, infallible men.
But I don't think that the degradation of a steward's authority is the fault of their people. That would be like saying that when a subordinate points out the failure in their company, that it's the subordinate's fault for the company's collapse. My question to Mormons: are you ever at a meeting with church leadership and encouraged to ask them hard questions, or to fill out surveys that highlight your issues with their leadership, or even anonymous complaint boxes? It's not uncommon for leaders in other organizations to have these sort of feedback systems. And in fact, it doesn't reduce their authority, it enhances it.
What's one piece of advice that you would always recommend to an entrepreneur, something that you've learned over the years that they can take with them in their new venture?
It's very important to seek out, to actively seek out and listen very carefully to negative feedback. And this is something that people tend to avoid because it's painful.
Yeah.
But I think this is a very common mistake, is to not actively seek out and listen to negative feedback.
If the leaders of the Mormon Church want to be good stewards, they must take into account the issues of their people. The historical silencing of internal disagreement in the Mormon Church is a fundamental sign of bad leadership. Rather than leading in a vacuum, leaders of the Mormon Church should actually listen to their congregations. Now, I promise you guys a hilarious video of Kwaku, so check it out.
Because I am deeply opposed to any idea or system that wants to, that is manipulative, right?
Yeah.
The second something feels or seems manipulative to me, I'm out. Half my YSA stake is depressed. Got all these suicidal young people. Parents got divorced because they left the church. Maybe it would have been good if we lied.
No.
Oh my God. I'm not kidding.
Yeah?
I'm being legitimately serious. How much better would Utah be right now if the church had said, you know what? We're not engaging in any of it. It's all anti-Mormon lies, and that's the way it is. These people are liars, and don't listen to them.
That's all I've got. I'm Forrest, Latter-day Skeptic. Please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.